Oh, okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Joy to get us started, and then I'll chat with you later.
So welcome everyone. Thank you again for being persistent and being with us here this morning. So today, Verna and I are going to be chatting with you about different career pathways you can take with the MTM program. So you can see Verna's picture up there and my picture down below. And feel free to email us directly or the program at mtm@berkeley.edu if you have any questions or anything that you wanted to follow up on. Um,
I think
so go ahead.
I know some of you um, were at our last one. So I'm the executive director. So I run the program across both campuses, and I teach one class each semester. And my background has been over 40 years in medical device industry.
Yep, and I've been with MTM for a few years now, but I have over 15 years of higher ed experience in different capacities. So um, that's a little bit about me. And then let's talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so on our agenda, we're going to talk about a bunch of data, but hopefully it'll answer a lot of your questions about what are the possibilities, what does the class look like. So we're going to talk about data and trends with MTM Career Paths. We'll have MTM alumni share their stories. They're here. That wasn't a glitch. So fortunately, they're all here with us. And then Q&A with those folks, and then opportunities and resources. So our students come from a lot of different backgrounds, as you can see here. So starting back in 2010, when our first cohort started, our program's obviously been around for just 14, 15 years here now. The first 2 years was as a Master's of Science program because we hadn't gotten full approval for officially the title of Master of Translational Medicine. So since that time, you can see our cohort has grown to around 40 students, and they have a lot of diversity in backgrounds, and that drives the diversity in the career paths after graduation. So you can see we've got everything from engineers that make up about half the group. And even though those engineers, a good portion of those are bioengineering or biomedical engineering. So that's a lot of folks that are going to be doing some of the prototyping, things like that. And then we've on capstone projects, and we've got biology, other life sciences backgrounds. And then we always have a group of clinicians that we like to have as part of our program. So with all of those broad backgrounds in undergraduate and even postgraduate degrees, you get this great cohort of students that you're learning from each other, not just from the faculty that you'll be taking courses with. So background is a lot of the sole determiner of what you go into, but not totally. So, because with that said, a lot of our students come into this program specifically because they are looking to pivot, maybe to a more business-focused career path, maybe to a more technical focused path if they have an undergraduate degree that is more business, because every once in a while we have a few business or other majors even outside of these that come in, and on, even pre-med students come in. So let me show you about what our students do then after graduating. We surveyed alumni and for several years into this one survey that was done just a little while ago. And here are the results. So I want to orient you to the graph because basically what it shows, we asked them what their career goals were before the start of the program. A lot of students then, after they graduate, have a little bit different path than what they thought when they were coming in. So we asked them, what's your first position after completing MTM? And then what was their current position? So as you can see here, a lot of students, when they had their career goal, They weren't really sure, obviously, because that's why they kind of come into our program, is to kind of see what the options are. But you can also see this green bar that's in the middle there is a startup or entrepreneurship. And what's key that I wanted to kind of show you is that, and the colors aren't really that good here, but working in industry is 40%. So, and then NA, like not knowing, is kind of this other dark one that also looks black. But in this format, just so you know, this big bar here is working in industry. So most of our students, over half, go into working in industry. And the key here is that you'll say that a lot of people want to maybe think about doing a startup or entrepreneurship job, but right after they graduate, it's not unusual to realize, okay, I'm not quite ready for that now, or I'm started on it, but I'm going to have a job full time, and then I'll be starting this maybe entrepreneurship or startup type company a little while later, because you can see that it pops up again, the green bar into a startup type role. But you can see also there's not an insignificant number of people who go back into clinical practice or into clinical practice, because we have, of the folks that are sort of clinically oriented, some of the students are already MDs and they may want to go into industry. And then also we have pre-meds. And so it kind of like ends up oftentimes evening out in terms of the clinical practice. You can see that folks come in here with this turquoise bar at about 15%. And then a lot of them move on to something else. And then that kind of flattens out to where some of the pre-meds some years later go into clinical practice. And so alumni sectors that are interesting and for you to consider is that you can see we've got biotech and medtech kind of running neck and neck. Those will probably bump up and be even closer together because this is our first year of therapeutics students in a therapeutic track of curriculum. Digital health is expanding. I'm sure that's going to increase as well. And then we always have a certain amount that go into consulting, medical school, like I mentioned, and then just a smattering of lots of other types of things that are even not MTM. Maybe they decide they're going to do something completely different. And there's lots of career paths that are within these sectors, within biotech and medtech. And so let's look into some of those pathways. So if we drill down one more layer into the industry side, that biotech and medtech portion, you can see that basically the pathways that students can go into is either the pharma, which we call pharma/biotech, medtech, which is device oriented, sometimes even considered within that is diagnostics, IVD, but here it's broken out, and then digital. And breaking out the medtech, but this would also look very similar in pharma or diagnostics or digital. You have all these individual roles where you can be an individual contributor in a company as opposed to into a management position. There's context support roles, and we break those out separately from technical roles because technical roles would be more like, say, R&D, research and development engineer, or manager, manufacturing engineer, etc. But context support would be roles like regulatory affairs, running clinical trials. There's clinician innovators. So those would be folks who continue to do clinical practice, but then partner with either their institution, hospital institution that might be an academic hospital to create new potential products, or they might be partnering with an external startup or a larger company to help bring new innovations to market. And then just as straight entrepreneurs who decide to start their own company. So all these roles are critical. And let's drill down a little bit further into this contextual support, like I mentioned. clinical research, regulatory, but there's also quality assurance, quality affairs, risk management support, business risk as well. Those are two separate risk types of roles. Project management, which would be portfolio planning, and then preclinical marketing, or sometimes people call animal labs, or even earlier preclinical types of testing. So let's look at what some of these job titles look like, and you can see where alumni have gone. So in terms of management and leadership roles, this would be like a founder, obviously, of a startup company, managers, senior and leads. These would be the percentage of our alumni in those specific roles. The senior and lead could be somewhat of a technical role or not, basically just senior or lead in the title. Engineer, these would be probably more like entry level or engineer 2, something probably within with probably less than 5 years of experience. So technical software engineer, students who go on to medical school or to or go on to being a clinician. Clinical research coordinator would be something in industry. And then those who go into even academic research and decide that they actually do want to go on to a PhD or an academic role. So this is basically a snapshot of alumni that have gone into those different roles. So let's talk, I'll talk about, and actually I'm going to transition to Joy because we're going to go into some common industry pathways and job titles.
Yeah, so let's talk about job titles, right? As you have seen, like we have such a diverse cohort with many different skill sets, all wanting to do different things within this sphere of medical innovation. So just going to break it down for you in terms of different categories. So you can look at different pathways and job titles as you're thinking of how could I use the MTM degree to get to where I want to go? Or here's new things that you might not have known that you could do with your MTM degree. So in terms of product management, right? So this is where we really intersect business and technology and user experience. A lot of these are like technical roles. There's technical roles that we'll be talking about, clinical research roles, consulting, but just under product management, you can be different types of product managers, right? So when you look at those. And technical, the different types of engineers, right? So you're doing the building, the designing, the testing. So some of these job titles are not as common, like a clinical engineer, for example, right? But the other ones are ones that you might have seen before or heard about before. In the clinical research, right, this is the branch that's healthcare science that determines the safety and effectiveness of these, medications that you're developing, devices, diagnostic products, and treatments. So it's obviously very important part of the process. And then consulting. Our MTM grads are really well suited for these roles as well. So you're supporting clients in development, marketing, positioning, regulatory strategy of their products and therapeutics. And then let's move on to medical affairs, right? So this is what we, bridge companies and medical professionals, communicate scientific and clinical findings. That's a great role for people that are clinicians that come into the program to maybe think about. In terms of entrepreneurship, right? You're a founder, you have the idea and you're starting a new venture. And then in the regulatory space, like you're really assisting in obtaining and maintaining like government approval for drugs, devices, and products. So that's obviously very important. So you need approval of your drug to be able to market it. And then going into marketing and sales, I think that one's a little bit more self-explanatory, but really marketing the product so that it is used within the clinical setting that your product is aiming to get into. So let's look at some first job examples for those that have an engineering undergrad, engineering background, right? So these are, engineers at different large companies and then some startups as well. So whether you're a systems engineer or even like a regulatory specialist, these are the types of roles. So next one, you'll see the types of roles that people take as a life science undergrad. Their focus tends to be a little bit more like in the lab, right? So you can see like a research associate at Gilead, data scientist, but you also see them transition into like the product manager and consulting roles as well. And then those that come to us with a clinician background, they're really getting into medical affairs. They're finding companies, right? Starting companies, let's go with that. And then really into this engagement space. So here's a snapshot of just some of the companies that our students go into. So you can see there's smaller companies, there's bigger companies, and then there's like the regulatory space, you'll see like FDA, and then you'll also see, Stanford, UCSF, like bigger institutions. So just so you know about like our job placement rates, like this is just a snapshot of the survey of students. So majority of students will find something within 6 months of graduation. And then there is a smaller subset that go on to do continuing education, either in like the PhD or clinician route. So probably one of the reasons you wanted to join today was to talk to our MTM alumni. I'll transition back to Verna real quick and we'll get into this part.
Okay. So obviously that was just a few examples of different roles, actually maybe even quite a bit. There's even more than these, but this kind of gives you just an idea of where your career could go. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. So let's make it more tangible with some real world examples. Our MTM alumni that are with us here are from a variety of cohort years. So we've got Puneet, Christine, and we've got Sydney on the line. So I'm going to turn off the screen share, and then we will do a Q&A portion. Let's see. And let's see, we'll start with some pre-prepared questions first to get things going. So what is, for all of you, or one of you, maybe Puneet, you start, what was the most formative or impactful aspect of the MTM program?
Oh, great. Sorry, could you repeat it again? I think I was in.
Yes, no worries. So what for you was the most formative or impactful part of the MTM program for you?
Oh, good question. I think the most impactful part of the program was understanding how different components interact to bring the device to market. Coming from an purely engineering background and then working with consulting, I think I had very limited knowledge of what goes behind the scenes when we bring the product to market. And through the program, I understood a lot about the regulatory aspects, the quality aspects of it. This could be out of naivety, but I had no clue about the amount of testing we have to do, about even the minutest change we make in the device or the prototype, and how everything has to be recorded for proof for the FDA, and ensuring the device performs better even after it is released in the market. Apart from that, learning from my cohort, the cohort I had was such diverse. I remember working with Ola, who had a neuroscience background, eating and Sheila with a clinical background, and working with such diverse people for similar projects, it helped me expand the way I see at things and how to include clinical perspectives or business perspective that Mihika gave. And this is something that's really, really helping me with my job right now. Because now I understand how I have to talk to various people. I have to talk to the marketing people, to the regulatory people, as well as the manufacturing and design engineer, so that the product we build satisfies all needs and all stakeholders.
Great. Thank you.
Should we go ahead and have each of them give like just a
Oh, yeah, yes.
quick
Yes.
bio before we jump into questions?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Let's do that.
Yeah, we can have, I guess, Puneet first, and then Rachel, and then Sydney. Just a quick snapshot of your background before MTM, and then where you are now, so people have an idea of where you're coming from.
Okay. So, hi, everyone. Very nice to see you all here. Before coming to the MTM, I had a degree in electrical engineering, and I graduated from my undergrad in 2020, which I did in India. And then I moved to consulting and project management for Accenture for 2 years, post which I came to the MTM program. So before the MTM program, I had very limited understanding of how medical devices are positioned into the market. From a technical understanding, yes, I did have understanding of how they work, but how are they launched? I was completely oblivious to that. So I graduated from the program in 2023, and now I work as a product engineer on the hardware side. So I'm basically a hardware product manager for the startup called Promaxo. We make low-field MRI machines for prostate cancer biopsies. A huge part of my job is testing proof of concepts and doing prototyping to come up with design requirements for the design engineers. And once we get those the prototypes, testing them for verification, updating design history files, coming up with design inputs and design output documents, and sending them off to the manufacturing. Some part of my job also entails doing verification and validation testing and coming up with the reports for the FDA. Oh,
Great.
and a little part of my job is also talking to the marketing people to help them understand how the device functions, as well as with sales representatives, and getting feedback from clinical engineers that we have on how we can improve the device for future iterations.
Thank you, Puneet.
All right, I'll sneak on in. I'm Rachel from the MTM class of 2017. I joined the program straight out of undergrad. So I had studied biomedical engineering at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and then I was looking for interdisciplinary bioengineering programs, and that's how I found my way to MTM. After the MTM program, again, just an exciting year of learning so much, being exposed to so much, and having all of these just diverse perspectives from your cohort kind of make you who you are. I worked at, the way I describe it, as a series of ill-fated exoskeleton startups. Then I worked at Genentech for a couple of years, specifically as a human factors engineer in their device development group. So a lot of pre-filled syringes, patch pumps, a really cool eye implant, all sorts of drug handling devices. And for the last 3 years, I've been working at Medtronic Structural Heart and Aortic Group as, you saw my job title, very officially Senior R&D Human Factors Design Engineer. So working specifically on catheter-based delivery systems for heart valves. So basically we take a heart valve, kind of scrunch it into the tip of a catheter, and it's a team of 4 cardiologists that have to drive it into the right place of the body. So it's not open heart surgery, and they have to use fluoro and echo to figure out exactly where to go to drop the valve. We've got a team of coaches in the room. You can imagine this is a very exciting place to be working as a human factors engineer. That's my whole story. Like Puneet, I work with all sorts of different functions. It's a very interdisciplinary and very systems level role. So really, really happy about this little path that MTM has kind of led me on.
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Adams. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, and I got my undergrad degree at LMU in biochemistry. And immediately after undergrad, I joined the MTM program. And my motivation for doing MTM was trying to transition out of a strictly early stage research role that a lot of biochemistry degrees offered. So after that, the MTM program, it was an eye-opening experience. I got to take classes, MBA classes, clinical research classes as well. And then immediately after I graduated MTM, probably like a few weeks, I started working at Gilead Sciences in the pharmaceutical development and manufacturing group. And I'm an analytical chemist, so I'm a bench chemist still, doing more late stage research now. So I get to see the final form of like the drug product, and I run a bunch of tests on our drug products to make sure that they are safe and efficacious for clinical use. And a lot of the data that I collect from the test go into phase appropriate FDA applications to get our drugs approved.
Excellent. Okay, maybe at this point, maybe let's open it up for questions from the audience.
Yeah, go ahead and either raise your hand, come off mute, put something in the chat. We know we started a little late, so we really want you guys to have the opportunity to chat with these folks that came on to give their story. And if not, we have tons of questions to ask them, but we really want you guys to have your moment, right? Get the questions you want answered from alumni. Okay, so maybe while you're thinking of that question, let's go ahead. I'll ask one question to Sydney. So how did your 5-year plan, like entering the program, compare to like where you're at now, even though you're just like 4 years out, but like,
Yeah.
how did that compare, like coming in versus like coming out?
So going in to the MTM program, I definitely wanted to transition into a more business focused role. And I wanted to completely pivot from my biochemistry background and do something completely different. But going through the MTM program and learning about the whole drug development process, I realized that I had an interest in the late stage pharma research, because I've been so focused on early stage in my undergrad career and stuff like that. So I think I'm definitely not where I thought I would be when I first joined, but I'm definitely on a path that I see is going to lead me to my like future career goals that I've kind of reworked after I graduated the program. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
I guess for Puneet, have there been any like non-linear surprises in your career journey to get to where you are today?
I guess so. And part of the blame is also to the MTM program for that. So after the MTM program, I learned so much that I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be a regulatory expert. I wanted to be a quality expert. I remember having this conversation with Rachel after I graduated. I was like, I don't know what to do. I want to do everything. Where will I find a role where I can do everything? Because the program gives you with such immense knowledge of all different parts of the product development life cycle. So after I graduated, I worked as a go-to-market intern for this startup that made we made off the shelf hearing aids, and I worked in the marketing side of it, and I was using everything I learned in the MTM program, speaking to technical experts, and then marketing it. And although I was enjoying it a lot, it just felt like, okay, I tried this, it's good, but do I want to continue doing this? Which is when I switched to product management. I was like, okay, I've already done project management before I came to the program. I can go back to project management, or let's just try product management. And this is the first time I've
Can you
worked.
also explain, because sometimes I know a lot of people still get confused between project management versus product management. Maybe you could say what that is, just because I know a lot of students who come in are saying like, isn't that the same? So
Yes, sure. So for project management, you're doing more about a single aspect of the product. Let's say there's a new feature that needs to come. So we'll do resource planning for it. What is the timeline looks like, how much time we can give to it. The product on the other side, so So project, you can also think about being focused on how many resources we have within the company to fulfill the need, to fulfill the specific project that we have. Product, on the other side, is more on what the user wants. Do we need to change how our product works? Do we need to add a new feature? So my job right now entails a tiny bit of project management, because I do work with the project managers. We have to identify, hey, we have this new feature. I need resources to build this, to test this. What is the bandwidth with different colleagues that I have? How can we make this work for the timeline that we have? And on the product side, testing prototypes, coming up with the prototypes. A huge part of my job is just coming up with prototypes based out of anything I found off the shelf in our labs. Most of my prototype models are just made out of foam to hold phantoms to run tests. And once I'm happy with what I have and the results I'm getting, after which we go to our 3D printed models and test everything again. So it's a huge cycle of coming up with requirements testing. And since it's hardware, it takes a longer while than software. I was also working in software before this job, and I had no idea I enjoyed hardware so much before I started it. And okay, at this point, I think I've spoken so much that I lost track of the question. But so coming back to the point, after the MTM program, I tried multiple things because I was interested in everything that I was taught. And it was only after trial and error I identified, okay, hardware product management is something that I truly, truly enjoy. And that said, I still interface with other cross-functional teams. So I'm keeping the MTM aspect alive in that sense. And it has helped a lot.
Great. Thanks, Puneet. Somin has a question. So Somin, why don't you feel free to.
Yeah, I think mine is kind of a two-part question. I think the first part maybe you can help answer, because I'm thinking about applying to the program after working in the industry for several years. My company is actually the one that took most of the C-suite executives from Lucira after it had filed for bankruptcy. And so I'm very familiar with like early stage product development, taking something from the very start to the very end. And I guess I'm wondering, for someone who was like working before they entered the program, why did you think it was important to make the decision to re-enter education? And then I guess that also kind of leads to my second question, which everybody could answer, or anybody can answer. Do you feel like you would not be able to get to where you are today without having entered this program? Because I hear a lot of debate whether or not industry experience is more important or going into continued education is more important. And so I'd love to hear your perspectives on that.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Shamin. So like Varna mentioned in her introduction, a lot of people come into the program because they want to pivot. So I was in software project management for Accenture. Although my clients were biopharma companies, I was helping in the M&A of Celgene and BMS. So when Celgene filed for bankruptcy, BMS acquired, BMS is Bristol Myers Squibb. They acquired Celgene, and I was helping in that M&A. However, I wasn't feeling that this is something that I want to do, because coming from an engineering background, I was always interested in hardware side of things, which is when I decided I really want to pivot and I want to move to a more biomed focused degree. So I come from India, and my university did not offer a biomedical degree, which is why I moved to an electronics and electrical engineering degree. And this MTM program became a really good spot for me, because I wanted to understand not only the clinical part as well as the business part of it. So it became the perfect program for me, because I knew I wanted to pivot all. And back in India, I did not find the right opportunities where I could learn this 360-degree understanding of how to build a medical device and bring it to market. So that was why I wanted to switch.
I'll add that, the pivot in some ways is kind of a shuffle, if you think about it. So I know I came into the program straight out of undergrad. And so my shuffle was a bigger shuffle. It was like it could go in any direction. And I think a lot of people still that metaphor still applies, where you take all the aspects of what you're doing right now, and then you kind of look to what you want to do after the program. And your year in the program is that shuffle. You can decide to lean into one aspect more than the other, or to say that your experience is kind of pushing you in a certain direction versus the other. So I think, again, people take it as a pivot. People take it as okay, I've experienced all these different things, and now I have this experience that I can call back onto to say that, okay, this actually is something I'm now qualified to do. That was the thing that got me after the program, where I was able to take my experiences at MTM and really realistically, like, say that this was work experience on a level that a lot of people in industry may not have had the chance to experience because of its multifacetedness or the depth that you get to go into with your capstone project over the year. So it was something that like felt super cool to be able to say, and then just like see what the next step would be after the program.
Yes, and I would just add that because you have the industry experience already, I would say it provides you a bit of an edge just because you know exactly what you want to do. You might have a better idea of what you want to do after the program, compared to someone coming straight out of undergrad, because you can kind of tailor your curriculum to your interests a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in also. So in running this program, I basically was really excited about running it because when I came out of Berkeley with bioengineering, actually my degree was mechanical engineering, but it started out as bioengineering, and I knew I wanted to go into that. And it takes so many years to be able to get and understand how companies are structured, what those silo departments are, and to really think about all those things that we presented in the last info session, which is like, okay, you've got regulatory affairs. What's your path going to be? At the same time, you have to think about reimbursement. You have to think about your business models and about 2 or 3 other things. So what I believe you get in a 10-month program is you get enough information, not only on a career path, but if you're going to stay in the same career path, you'll be able to think much more strategically. So as an engineer, for instance, I know from my own experience, it took years to understand, oh, if I change this design, what's that going to mean for my patents? Do I need to create new patents? Is it going to mean I'm going to have a problem with the space that I want to innovate in? Do I have other patents out there blocking me? At the same time, what's happening to my regulatory path? Can I still use the same predicate? It's one of the terms we use, and on and on. So even when I was teaching at Santa Clara, sometimes it was my first time teaching, but I'd had students, because I teach the design control and of course our classes across both campuses. But at Santa Clara, when I was teaching, I realized I had students that had 5, even 10 years of experience. And they were telling me since they had been siloed in a particular department like R&D, they didn't know how all of these things connected. And unless you're in a company that's big enough and that invests in education for you in terms of in-house education, and less and less companies are doing that, then I think that it's just going to take you a lot longer. You could stay in industry and try to learn on your own, but you also, can learn faster in our program. So I think it just kind of depends on what you want to do and if you want to make that time investment. We also have students who will work part-time at their current job, especially with the like really topsy-turvy job market, because they feel like they have a safe landing when they come back out. So I hope that answers it from a variety of perspectives. Great. Okay, and Alexandra. Oh, she just got.
Oh, I forgot to unmute myself.
Okay.
So that was really great. And I kind of segues into what I'm wondering from the alumni is just how you all found your positions after graduating. Were they companies that you went back to, or were they like, how long did it take you? How did you find them? Were they sort of connections you made in the program?
I can start. So I interned at Gilead Sciences during undergrad, and I had a lot of connections there when I entered the MTM program. And when I started looking for jobs in the second semester, I reached out to some of my contacts there, and that's kind of how I got into the role that I'm in now. So it was pretty simple, easy process. I did apply to other jobs in other companies, but Gilead gave me the best offer, I would say. Yeah.
My story is a little more convoluted in the sense that my first job out of MTM was a capstone project that didn't go through. I just stayed in touch with their lab throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, they were looking for somebody to translate their idea from academia to industry. And I was like, look at this perfect degree I have. So that was the first of the ill-fated exoskeleton startups. The next job, this is the story I always tell. I threw myself a birthday party called Find Rachel a Job / Boyfriend, alternate theme Vegas. And I had all my friends come. And literally when the startup had failed, I was the only one who lost my job. Everybody else was a postdoc. So it was just this group of all my friends. And I said, any leads? One person knew somebody at UCSF who was looking for an exoskeleton consultant. I started working with them on a project to basically run a usability study in conjunction with Hyundai's exoskeleton program. After doing that, I was like, I'm a human factors engineer. Let me start applying for roles with that title. I got the job at Genentech, and that's where I really learned to do it in a full big system. And I was recruited for the job here at Medtronic. So it got easier and easier each time, which was kind of interesting. And I think that's the general experience where, to me, it makes perfect sense in retrospect, all the little steps that led here. And I still go back to, I do think it was MTM that put me on this path.
I always enjoy when Rachel tells her story about her birthday party. So I got my first job after the MTM through a career fair. So there was a career fair for bioengineering, and Pancha Labs was there. So they recruited me for this internship as a go-to-market intern through that career fair. Apart from them, there was also other offers, but I think they gave me the best offer, so I chose that. And later I switched to Promaxo, which was also, I made contacts at Promaxo through another Berkeley career fair, and it worked out well because the person who interviewed me, she and I had the same capstone program. She was a Berkeley bioengineering undergrad, and she and I had the same capstone project in different years. So that's how we bonded. And I told her about how the capstone was performing when I was with them, and then she talked about how it was in the preliminary stages when it was just testing proof of concept, and by the time I had joined, there was already a product there and we were testing it. So that helped a lot. And once I decided to switch my jobs, I just reached out to her, and then she introduced me to her manager, and then that's how the conversations began. So I think Berkeley, the resources offered by the MTM program, and Berkeley through career fairs, they helped me to find this job.
Yeah. I also can't believe I didn't say at that birthday party, the person who knew the person at UCSF was an MTM alum from the year prior to me. So it's it goes deeper and deeper the more you think about it.
Let's get back to finish up our slide deck. And so Joy, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so we just wanted to give you a sense of the structure and support that you're going to be receiving while you're in the MTM program. So we will be connecting you with over 300 alumni. I think we're at 350-ish.
Actually, it's actually just under 400 now.
Okay. So next year it'll be 400 plus on this slide. Look, there's a big professional development workshop push. So most of these are run through our partnership with the Fung Institute. These are things that our MTM students, we have a professional development lead student within the program that we work with on different development workshops. We also provide a bunch of alumni and industry panels and chats. So in certain areas, we'll collect a group of alumni to come either in person or virtually to talk to our students about that space. One thing that's really fun and cool, I think, is our affinity groups. So these are alumni mentors that take 4 or 5 MTM students under their wing in a certain area. And those students like really get a lot out of this. So they have like monthly meetings with us alumni in this area and learn a lot. There's one-on-one coaching. So, Verna has over 40 years of industry experience, so she knows some things. So there's a lot of great coaching that she's able to do. And then there's a bunch of conferences and certifications, and the MTM program does provide grants to attend some of these conferences. So there's a wealth of knowledge that you get by being in the MTM program, and then we provide you with all the connections out there in the Bay Area ecosystem to continue to, build your network of people. So you can have a birthday party one day and get connected to a future position. So there's also a full access to career development services provided by the Fung Institute. And they provide a variety of services too. These are just some of them that they provide. So there's full access outside of the Fung Institute within the UC Berkeley ecosystem. And these are just some of the campus resources on each campus that you'll see. So we talked a little bit about Fung Institute. There's the career centers. There's different startups, incubators, consulting clubs on each campus. There's just the amount of resources and activities for you to do outside of like required coursework is so vast. You really have to pick and choose and narrow down where you want to concentrate your efforts, because you could spend your whole time here just at different events and resources and you have to remember you're here for the degree. So there's just so much. What really makes us special, and Verna can like really touch, and you can really hear her mama heart on this one, but we live our shared mission. So let Verna jump back.
Okay, so I think obviously just getting to chat a little bit with our alumni, you can tell that the people is really what makes this program really special. So though our alumni come from diverse backgrounds and go on to take similarly diverse roles after the program, what really brings MTM students together during and after the program is that all of them, and hopefully would be all of you, have a very deep-seated passion for helping people and improving healthcare, not only in this country, but around the world. And that also is reflected where our students go after the program. And a lot of them stay in the Bay Area, but a lot of them even have, a mission to go back to their own country to improve healthcare and technology. So the most exciting thing about my job is seeing students and helping students find their path and make those connections, and just encouraging them, and hopefully all of you, to like think big and dream big. I think if anything, you might come in here and think, oh, I got in, do I belong? You will quickly learn with my encouragement and the other faculty and clinicians that you get into this program for a reason. We believe in you, and we will nurture you, and we will grow you along the way, and it will be an amazing year. And so it might be by developing a new device, I might be working on a new drug or therapeutic, coordinating a clinical trial, regulatory path. So in all those ways, you'll get to try on different things and connect with people who can help you make that happen. So if you have any questions, of course, email us at mtm@berkeley anytime, or even directly. Joy and I are the ones who monitor this particular website. So you can email us there, or individually at either Joy's email or my email, and we are happy to respond. And remember, applications, get them started soon. They are due January 6th. And ask for those letters of recommendation now, so that it's not in the middle of the holidays, because people take, those professors and managers or supervisors want some time to be able to write a personal letter of recommendation that is really strong. So that's all we've got. And yeah, any further follow-up questions?
Sorry, I joined a little bit late because I couldn't find the link. So I hope no one had asked this earlier, but I was wondering if any of you could share some of the like more impactful memories that you've made, whether it was like your capstone projects, which I was reading about, or some of the favorite courses you took in the curriculum, whether it was from Haas or the even like the law school, which I was very interested in as well.
I was in the program a long time ago, so I don't know if this course, if it's, still there in the same format, but it was a class at Haas, and I think it was called Healthcare Investing. It had a really innocuous title. And basically what it was run by two VCs who, I really hope this class is still going on because it was incredible. They would bring in startup CEOs and they'd have them pitch to us. And then they'd leave and they would be like, here's what was bad. This. Like they'd kind of tear down the proposal. We'd be like, that was a great proposal. And they'd go through why or where it could be stronger. It was obviously very positively themed towards the end, kind of a thing. That was the coolest class I've ever been a part of. It opened my brain up to, oh, I could be doing this. Like this is something I'm qualified to do. This is what people do in the Bay Area. It was really great in that way. So that class in and of itself was just a really great experience for me. Obviously, there were a lot of little things too, the memories that you were talking about, class trip or whatever it is. You just go as a group, decide you're going to Monterey for the weekend or something like that. We actually got the chance to go to the TechCrunch Awards. I don't think they have those anymore. And it was super cool, just celebrities abound. And then this little MTM class all dressed up, also just in attendance by nature of, we deserve to be there too. It was so fun to do those things, to be a student and to get into places because you were. That was what I loved a lot.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Poppy. We had a weird Zoom glitch. So we thought maybe we'd done something on our end, but it was the first time we've experienced it. Somehow Zoom was dead for a while. And so people could not, no one could log in for like 10 or 15 minutes. So anyway, so we apologize, but
no, yeah. I thought at first I was redirected to the grad site. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to just click through the videos.
Yes, no, that's what was happening to people. Okay, how about Alu Queen?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I also joined the meeting late. I just have one question. Okay, I joined because issues with the. I don't know if you. I really like the fact that there is a lot of networking with the alumni in this program. It's very impressive. But I'm wondering if there are. Among your alumni, there are people who had maybe got after the program, gone back to their home countries and also had successful careers there, either as startups or other things. I'm talking about career paths now outside the US. Thank you.
I know one of our students, he has not gone back yet. Actually, two of our students are intending to go back. Since this is just my third year running the program, a lot of times students don't immediately go back, but they gather some experience here, work experience. So I know one student, she was one of our MasterCard scholars, and she's right now working in Indiana for Eli Lilly drug company. But she will be planning to go back to her country, which I believe is Nigeria. And then Elijah, also continent of Africa, he went to school in, I think it was Georgia Tech, yeah, where I recruited him from. And he became really excited in the program. Biodesign, and there's some other, like Stanford Biodesign, and also John Hopkins have international arms of their programs. We don't have that yet. Kind of my goal is to grow that eventually, but we're looking to grow our program here first. And so I know Elijah's plan is to go and he wants to start a biodesign type of branch in West Africa, because right now they have it in East Africa. And so that's what his plan is right now. He went through a Fogarty Innovation Summer Internship, and his plan is to eventually go grow a biodesign type, something like MTM or biodesign in his country, which is Niger. And then maybe I know we had one student who went back to India, but I haven't been in contact with her, and anybody else alumni who know students who've gone back to their home country.
In my cohort, I remember, I think there were two physicians, one from Taiwan, one from Canada, who went back, and then one of them is like now leading some branch of like innovations within his hospital.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me also of, we have one student from China. He came to the programs directly because he wanted to learn about the US, building in the US market. And so he went back to China, and now he's got these connections in the Bay Area. So he's planning to grow his robotics company into the US market. So another very different example. And then we've had folks from Europe. I know there was a student, I can't remember the name, but I know she went back to Europe to go into either a public health or public policy position in, Puni, do you remember? It was from your class. I think she went
It was, she went back to
right.
France, yes.
Yes, back in France. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Let's see. Oh, we got some in the chat. Guess we've got everything. Office hours, right? So we've got office hours. If you go to our website, mtm.berkeley.edu, you'll see ambassadors, and they've got office hours you can sign up for. And I think that is it for everyone.